What's up, everyone? Today we're going to be talking about the collab for HSR and Fate. So, a couple of background stuff before I go into my full review, I guess. In terms of the Fate series itself, I'm not going to pretend that I'm the biggest fan because I'm not. I respect it for what it is. The last time I saw anything Fate related was over a decade ago because I saw Fate Stay Night. A friend of mine went to an anime convention. We went together, and during the convention that we went to, he gave me like DVDs for the Fate Stay Night series. And that's pretty much all I've seen. So all the other spin-offs or additions to the story I haven't watched, so I'm not going to pretend that I'm a super fan, but I respect it for what it is. And I've seen like fake collabs in other games, and a lot of them have been good. But the reason that I'm talking about it here is because anyone who's watched my channel long enough knows that I'm a big critic when it comes to collabs. Just ask Last Claudia, they know all about that. So I'm very opinionated. And when it comes to collabs, this is the time to go all out because the point of doing a collab really is to get an audience to your game, a different audience, basically. You do want to cater a little bit to your, normal players, but maybe get some more players to come in because they like the Fate series. So that's always a good thing to do. But the question is, did they do a good enough job? And that's what we're going to be discussing here. So there are going to be three main things that I'm going to be discussing to determine how I feel about it. One is going to be the story or story presentation itself. Two is going to be the actual event outside the story, like the other part where you're just doing the combat stuff. And then number three are going to be the characters, because ultimately that matters a lot as well. So, first thing we're going to talk about is the story itself. Now, I have some issues, I'm going to be honest. So, let's see if we can kind of get through this together. Now, the actual story premise, I think, is fine. It's not horrible. It's not the best. It's not good or bad. It's just okay. I got really nothing against the actual story itself. However, I do have some issues with the way the story is presented. It's more the immersion or the lack of immersion that's the problem for me. What do I mean? For people who prefer English voice acting, you're going to be very disappointed. First and foremost, we have a character from HSR, Jade, who is a very important member of the IPC, who's in the story. However, she has no voice dialogue. And I have a problem with that. One of two things should happen. Either one, don't put her in the story, or two, hire a new voice actor to play the part. Because when you have some people who actually have voice dialogue and some that don't, it breaks the immersion. So I have a huge issue with this. Now, I've heard things about, some people being on strike and this and this and that. I don't care about all that. As the company itself, you need to figure that out. So let's do better in the future when it comes to that. And that's not my only issue in terms of the lack of voice acting. The actual collab characters that are in here, all three of them do not have voice lines at all. At least not for the English side. I think they have like Japanese if you have that. But for English, you get no voice acting, which is worse in terms of immersion. Now, I'm not talking about the part of the story where there's no voice acting at all, because that's intentional. It's part of the story. But for the part that actually includes voice acting, when you have half the people with no voice and the other half with some voice, it just completely destroys the immersion and makes the story just all around bad for me. Even though I was okay with the premise, I just don't like the fact that you got very important people with no voice lines for the English side. So if I'm going to rate the story, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. And the only reason it's not lower is because I thought the actual story idea was fine. I do actually like the story in general, but yeah, just the lack of voice acting and very inconsistent stuff that breaks the immersion really messes it up for me. The next thing that I kind of want to talk about is the actual event itself. So there is an event separate from the story where you do a bunch of combat stuff. It's so similar to Divergent Universe where you're doing a bunch of fights and you have to like pick upgrades, except there's no walking around basically. I actually enjoy that a lot. I really do. I like the combat in the game, and I think they did a pretty decent job. Basically, you quote unquote fight other characters in the game, but you're really just fighting a bunch of like mobs or whatever, and you just keep fighting until you eliminate all the teams basically. And yeah, you get some good rewards. I have no issues with this at all. I think it's a lot of fun. I would say it's arguably the best thing about the collab. It was the actual like combat event itself. I would give that a 9 out of 10. Like I like it a lot. Now the characters themselves, which let's go ahead and bring up the character screens here for the warps. So you have Saber and you have this little guy here. So I like the fact that you get this guy for free, Archer. And from what I've been told, or from what I've heard, he's a really good character. My understanding is a follow-up character that's very skill point hungry, which means you're incentivized to use Sparkle. Even though I'm not going to use him myself, despite being a follow-up guy, I don't like skill-hungry characters. But I respect this guy because this is a character that was made that actually makes an older character more useful, more viable. Anytime a new character can make an old character better, that's a plus in my opinion. Plus, he's a free character. Now, you can pull if you want to get dupes and stuff like that. That's up to you. But I appreciate the fact that we got a free unit that's actually pretty good. I don't know much about Saber's kit. It seems like she's basically a DPS character. Very popular character in general. Like in any collab that Fate has with any other game, she's always basically there because she's very popular, and I get it. But overall, from what I can tell, she seems like a decent character too. So I think they did a really good job with the characters in general. However, there is one problem that I have. In the story, there is a third Fate character named Lancer, who, for whatever reason, is not on these banners. Why not? Because, if he is a part of the story for the collab, why would you not be able to pull for him? So I do have an issue with that. It's like, why is he even there if we can't even really keep him around? It makes no sense. So there's a little bit of inconsistency there. So even though I like the two characters that we got, especially the ones we all get for free, that's awesome. But the fact that you have a third character in the story that you can't pull for is a bit of an issue, which is why my scoring is going to be more of an 8 instead of a 9. If it had been just the two characters in the story and then these two characters here, it would have probably been a 9 out of 10 easily. But the fact that we have this glaring missing character that's in the story but not in the gacha pull is going to drop it to an 8 out of 10. I still like the characters that we got, but we should have got Lancer too, just because it's in the story. If he's going to be in the story, you should have the opportunity to pull for him if you want to. It's not uncommon to have, multiple characters for a collab to be pulled for. There are games I've seen where you can pull 3 or 4 characters from a collab within the same, event. So they could have done this, and I'm sure money-wise it would have made them a lot of money too. Not that I'm trying to make the company money because they're I'm sure $1 billion company, but this felt like a complete miss. And a couple of just side things that I want to bring up that's not going to affect my rating. You can get an arc. I'm not an arc. God, wrong game. You can get a light cone for your boy here if you spend a certain number of pulls, basically. And they advertise it as a free gift. Let's be real. Let's use common sense. If you don't have the resources to do that many pulls, is this really a free gift? I think we know what the answer is here. This is not a free gift. Now, if you're a spender, and you're pulling on the characters and you pull it out to get this, then yeah, that's fine because you were already going for something else anyway. You already have the funds or the resources saved up, whatever the case may be. that makes sense. But if you're like me, who's like a light spender and didn't save up because I just have other characters to pull for, this is not a free gift, because at the end of the day, I would have to spend money to get this many pulls, to get this quote free gift. So more of a marketing scam, if nothing else. So I don't have a problem with this existing. I have a problem with this being labeled a free gift, because it's not at the end of the day. Oh, sorry, it says fate gift, not free gift. I read that wrong. But either way, I don't see it as a gift if you're paying for it. That's the point. I just wanted to bring that out there because I think it was kind of important to discuss. You know, it's basically incentivizing everybody to spend more money, basically, which didn't work for me because I'm good at keeping a budget, or at least I try to be. So, with everything stated here, if I'm going to really rate the collab as a whole, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Like I said, the event I thought was really strong, and I honestly think the characters are pretty good too, like really fun. But the story, specifically the lack of voice dialogue on characters that are there for the English side, strongly disappointed in that. And the fact that we have a third collab character in the story that you can't pull for is also kind of bad. So, but overall, I would say this is still a decent collab. I could say they could have done a little bit better overall, but good enough is what I'll say. Now, I understand that Honkai Star Rail doesn't really do collabs very often, but that's also a bigger reason why they should have done better. Because if this is something you're not going to do very often, then there's a lot more expected out of you. And for a one-time thing, it could have been a lot better. I'll be real. But hopefully this was informative to you and that you enjoyed this. And thanks for taking the time to watch my video. Later.